Nestled amidst the majestic Rocky Mountains of Colorado, the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park is not just a magnificent historical landmark, but also a monument to fear in popular culture. This is the real-life Overlook Hotel, the place that made the king of horror, Stephen King, tremble and write his masterpiece, The Shining. But the question remains, what really happened within these long, winding corridors and luxurious rooms? Why did a world-class resort hotel become one of the most heavily haunted places in the world? The story of the Stanley Hotel is inseparable from the man who created it, Freeland Oscar Stanley, also known as F.O. Stanley. He was no ordinary hotelier, along with his identical twin brother, Francis Edgar, F.E. Stanley was a genius inventor, engineer, and entrepreneur of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The Stanley brothers made their name and fortune through groundbreaking inventions. First, in the field of photography by creating a dry plate process that accelerated the speed of photo development, an invention they later sold to George Eastman, the founder of Kodak, for a huge sum. After that, their passion shifted to an even newer and more daring field: automobiles. They created the Stanley Steamer, one of the most successful and famous steam-powered cars of its time, a machine nicknamed the Flying Teapot that could reach astonishing speeds. F.O. Stanley was the embodiment of the American dream, intelligent, innovative, and successful. But in 1903, at the height of his career, Stanley received a death sentence. He was diagnosed with tuberculosis, a devastating and incurable disease at the time. Doctors on the East Coast told him he only had a few months to live and advised him to go to the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, hoping the dry, thin, and fresh mountain air might extend his life a little longer. Accepting his fate, F.O. Stanley and his wife Flora went to Estes Park, a remote and beautiful valley, to prepare for his final days. But a miracle happened. Against all odds, after just one summer in Estes Park, Stanley's health improved dramatically. The tuberculosis seemed to be in retreat. He not only survived but made a miraculous recovery, regaining nearly 30 pounds and feeling healthier than ever. Perhaps it was this beginning that planted a supernatural seed in the story of the Stanley Hotel. For Stanley, Estes Park was not just a resort, it was a land of healing, a place of rebirth. He had come here to face death, and instead he found life again. His love and gratitude for this land became boundless. He decided to make Estes Park his summer home and share its magical beauty with the world. However, Stanley, a man of the upper class, was dissatisfied with the rustic, simple amenities of the town. He decided to bring the luxury, sophistication, and class of the East Coast to this wild mountain region. He purchased thousands of acres of land, including the site of an old, burnt-down hotel owned by an Irish earl named Lord Dunraven. And on that land, F.O. Stanley began to build his dream. A grand, magnificent resort hotel that would rival the most luxurious resorts in Europe. A paradise for the elite. The Stanley Hotel opened on July 4th, 1909. And it immediately became an architectural and technological marvel. With a construction cost of over $500,000 at the time, it was an incredibly lavish project. It was the first fully electric hotel west of the Mississippi, with power supplied by a hydroelectric plant built by Stanley himself. Each of its 140 rooms had a telephone, a private bathroom, and a heating system. Unimaginable luxuries in such a remote place in the early 20th century. Stanley spared no expense to turn his hotel into a paradise. He built a magnificent concert hall as a gift for his music-loving wife, Flora, and presented her with a grand Steinway piano. He built a billiards room, a bowling alley, and invited the wealthiest guests from all over the world, bringing them there in his own Stanley steamer cars. The Stanley Hotel quickly became a premier summer destination, a symbol of elegance amidst the wildness of nature. But as we often see in horror stories, behind the glittering facade and glorious beginnings often lie omens of tragedy. And tragedy did not make the Stanley Hotel wait long. Just 2 years after its opening, on a summer night in June 1911, a disaster occurred, an event that would forever etch the name of Room 217 into the annals of haunted places. At that time, although the hotel had electricity, Stanley had a backup system of acetylene gas lamps installed in each room in case of a power outage. On one stormy night, the hotel's electrical system failed. The head chambermaid, a woman named Elizabeth Wilson, went through the floors to light these gas lamps. Unfortunately, she was unaware that there was a serious gas leak in the west wing of the second floor. Acetylene gas, an odorless and extremely flammable gas, had accumulated in high concentrations in the space between the ceiling of the first floor dining room and the floor of the rooms on the second floor. When Mrs. Wilson entered room 217 and lit a match, a horrific explosion occurred. The force of the blast blew the floor out from under her. Mrs. Wilson, along with a portion of the room, fell straight into the dining room below. The explosion destroyed 10% of the hotel, shattered glass windows, and injured several people. Miraculously, no one was killed in the explosion. Even Mrs. Wilson, despite breaking both of her ankles and falling from the second floor, survived. After her recovery, she returned to work at the Stanley Hotel and was promoted to head of housekeeping, a position she held until her retirement. She lived a long life and passed away in her private home in Estes Park in the 1950s at the age of 90. The explosion in room 217 was a real tragedy, documented in local newspapers. It was the first scar on the perfect face of the Stanley Hotel, and many believe that the trauma from that terrifying explosion, combined with Mrs. Elizabeth Wilson's loyalty to the hotel, created one of the most famous and active spirits there. Almost immediately after Mrs. Elizabeth Wilson passed away, strange stories began to emerge from room 217. Guests in the room started reporting unexplainable phenomena, all of which seemed to bear the mark of a strict but diligent housekeeper. Mrs. Wilson's spirit is said to still be working in the room that nearly took her life. She seemingly still considers it her responsibility, and she has her own very particular rules. Many guests have recounted waking up to find their clothes neatly folded or their suitcases tidily organized, even though no staff had entered the room. Lights in the room often turn on and off by themselves, and guests' personal belongings are moved around. The most interesting and peculiar thing is the conservatism of Mrs. Wilson's ghost. She seemingly does not approve of unmarried couples sleeping in the same bed. Many couples have reported feeling a cold force wedging itself between them as they sleep, as if an invisible third person is trying to separate them. Single men are also not particularly welcome. Their luggage is sometimes found neatly packed and placed outside the door, as a reminder that their bachelor lifestyle is not accepted here. To me, Mrs. Wilson's ghost is one of the most human spirits I've ever researched. She isn't scary in the way a malevolent demon is. She is more like a strict grandmother, still trying to maintain order and her old-fashioned moral values even after death. Her presence is both humorous and a bit of a nuisance, but above all, it shows a deep attachment, a loyalty to the job and the place that defined her entire life. The story of Mrs. Wilson became even more famous after an incident involving a Hollywood star. During the filming of the comedy Dumb and Dumber at the Stanley Hotel in 1994, actor Jim Carrey requested to stay in room 217. According to the story, after only 3 hours, Carrey ran out of the room in terror and refused to go back. To this day, he has never publicly spoken about what happened in that room that night. What could have possibly frightened a famous comedian so much? Was it perhaps that the housekeeper, Elizabeth Wilson, was not too fond of this single guest? The haunted reputation of the Stanley Hotel in room 217 might have remained just a local story if not for a fateful night in October 1974. That night, a struggling young writer named Stephen King, along with his wife Tabitha, decided to take a last-minute trip. They arrived at the Stanley Hotel on the very last day of the tourist season, just before the hotel closed for the harsh winter. They were the only guests in the entire vast hotel. King vividly described his experience: dinner in an empty dining room with all the other tables having their chairs turned upside down on them, with only the sound of pre-recorded orchestral music playing. After dinner, he wandered the long, deserted hallways, feeling the isolation and the strange atmosphere of a place that was once so crowded, now completely empty. And they were checked into room 217. That night, Stephen King had a terrifying nightmare. He dreamed that his 3-year-old son was screaming and running through the hotel's corridors, being chased by a living fire hose that was trying to strangle him. He woke up with a jolt, drenched in sweat, his heart pounding. To calm himself, he went out onto the balcony, lit a cigarette, and looked out at the majestic but desolate mountain scenery in the dark of night. And right at that moment, in the solitude and lingering fear from the nightmare, the entire basic structure of the novel The Shining formed in his mind. A struggling writer like himself, a remote hotel isolated by winter snow like his experience, and a son with psychic abilities being hunted by the hotel's ghostly forces. The nightmare about the fire hose, a seemingly random detail, has an astonishing connection to the room's history. Room 217 was the site of an explosion related to fire. Could it be that somehow the residual energy from the trauma of the explosion, or the spirit of Mrs. Elizabeth Wilson herself, had communicated with the subconscious of King, a man already sensitive to the supernatural? Did the hotel choose him to tell its story? The novel The Shining, published in 1977, became a massive success, and the 1980 film adaptation by director Stanley Kubrick became a monument of the horror genre. Although the movie was not filmed at the Stanley Hotel and has many differences from the novel, for example, the room in the film is 237, not 217. It forever linked the image of the Stanley Hotel with the haunted Overlook Hotel. Thousands of fans from all over the world have flocked here, not for a relaxing vacation, but to seek a taste of the terror that Stephen King experienced. This event revived the Stanley Hotel, transforming it from a gradually decaying landmark into a world-class haunted tourism destination. But the story of Stephen King and the housekeeper's spirit in room 217 is just the opening chapter of a much thicker book of horror. The entire hotel, from the basement to the attic, from the concert hall to the grand staircase, is home to countless other spirits. There are the cheerful spirits of the founders, mischievous children, lonely cowboys, and even more unpleasant entities. And at the center of all this activity is believed to be an energy portal, a supernatural vortex located right at the hotel's grand staircase. We have seen that the terror Stephen King experienced was just a small piece of a much larger haunted puzzle. Room 217 may be the most famous room, but it is not the only place where spirits reside. The entire hotel, from its luxurious corridors to its dark, hidden corners, is a stage for supernatural phenomena. Many psychics and investigators believe that the reason for this dense haunting lies not in a single tragedy, but at the very heart of the hotel, a place known as the Vortex, an energy whirlwind. Let's start at the center of all activity. The place believed to be the main source of energy that attracts and holds spirits at the Stanley Hotel, the majestic grand staircase in the main lobby. To the average tourist, this is an architectural masterpiece, a perfect spot for memorable photos. But to psychics and paranormal investigators, it is known by another name, the Vortex. They believe this staircase is not merely a passageway between floors. It is a type of spatial gateway, a spiritual energy tunnel connecting our world with the world of the deceased. The theory proposed is that the special architecture of this area, with large mirrors placed opposite each other, has inadvertently created a metaphysical portal into the spirit realm, allowing spirits to freely enter the world of the living. It acts as a ghostly highway, and that is why so many spirits, even those who did not die here, choose the Stanley Hotel as their sanctuary. To me, this is an extremely fascinating and frightening theory. It completely changes the nature of the haunting at the Stanley. It's no longer a story of spirits bound by their own tragedies, as in many other locations we've explored. Instead, the Stanley becomes a destination, a gathering place, an inn for wandering spirits. This means that anyone, any spirit, can come and go, making the phenomena much more unpredictable and diverse. This theory is not without basis. Countless guests and staff have reported seeing apparitions, misty figures walking up and down the stairs before disappearing. The most famous and persuasive evidence is perhaps a photograph taken by a guest. In the picture, a little girl in classic attire is standing on the stairs, although there were no children nearby at the time. This photo is so clear that it made national news and is considered by many to be the most authentic proof of the Vortex's existence. If the Vortex is the gateway, then who are the hosts welcoming these invisible guests? None other than the people who created this place, F.O. Stanley and his wife Flora. Unlike the other frightening spirits, their presence is described as quite gentle, as if they are still enjoying the fruits of their labor and continuing their role as hosts even in the afterlife. Mrs. Flora was a woman who loved art and especially music. The magnificent concert hall was a gift built for her by F.O. Stanley. At the center of the room is the Steinway grand piano that she adored. It seems her love of music still echoes on. Many staff and guests have recounted hearing melodious classical piano music coming from the concert hall late at night, long after the musicians have left and the guests have gone to bed. Flora's spirit seems to be very protective of her piano. There are stories of the piano lid slamming down on the hands of those who try to play it without permission, as a gentle but firm warning. Meanwhile, F.O. Stanley's spirit seems to still be walking around, overseeing his property. He is often seen in the places he loved in life, the bar, the billiards room, and the main lobby. His face is said to frequently appear in reflections. One of the strangest stories is that an image of his face seemingly imprinted itself onto an American flag that was gifted to the hotel, an unexplainable phenomenon. The couple is also often felt in the music room, where they once spent many evenings entertaining guests. The clinking of glasses and cheerful laughter of phantom parties are also often heard in the ballroom when no one is there. The presence of the Stanley couple brings a different shade to the hotel's haunting. It's not just fear, but also nostalgia and a bit of romance. They are the spirits of the place, the guardians of their legacy, a stark contrast to the uninvited guests who bring chaos and terror. If the grand staircase is the gateway, then the fourth floor seems to be a favorite destination for many spirits, especially those of children. This is considered the area with the highest concentration of supernatural activity in the entire hotel. The history of this floor partly explains why. Originally, the fourth floor was just a huge attic used for storage. Later, it was converted into living quarters for female employees and their children, before becoming guest rooms. Today, many guests on the fourth floor frequently report hearing the sound of children running, laughing, and playing chase in the hallway late at night, when it should be completely quiet. Inside the rooms, closet doors are said to open and close on their own, and guests' belongings, especially clothing, often go missing mysteriously, only to reappear later neatly folded in a drawer. Some guests even bring lollipops and leave them in the room as a gift for the ghost children. The next morning, they discover the lollipops have been moved to new, hard-to-reach places. To me, the haunting of children always has a special quality. It's a mix of innocence and death, of laughter and chills. Are these happy spirits just playing, or are they lonely, trapped souls trying to get attention? The act of guests leaving them candy is a very touching gesture, an attempt by the living to comfort the dead, a deeply human interaction between two worlds. However, not all the spirits on the fourth floor are as friendly as the children. Some rooms seem to be occupied by adult entities carrying more complex and unsettling energies. Room 428 is said to be one of the most haunted rooms. Guests frequently report seeing the ghost of a lone cowboy, sometimes appearing at the foot of the bed and staring at them as they sleep, or standing silently in a corner of the room. They also hear heavy footsteps and the sound of furniture being moved from the ceiling, even though there is no room above 428. It is believed that this is the spirit of James Nugent, a real historical figure known by the nickname Rocky Mountain Jim. He was a mountain explorer, a hunter, and also an outlaw. He had a bitter conflict with Lord Dunraven, the former owner of the land, and was shot but did not die immediately. The bullet remained lodged in his brain and he died months later. Rocky Mountain Jim was also known as a ladies' man, and this seems to continue after his death. Many female guests in room 428 have reported the feeling of cold, invisible lips kissing them in the middle of the night. Room 401 is said to be haunted by an unfriendly male ghost, especially towards women. Many female guests have reported the feeling of being inappropriately touched by an unseen hand while standing in the room's closet. Meanwhile, room 407 is home to another spirit, believed to be that of Lord Dunraven himself, the grumpy Irish earl who once owned this land. This ghost is described as an angry entity, often standing in a corner watching, making lights flicker, and sometimes pulling on guests' hair. These spirits, unlike the Stanleys or Mrs. Wilson, seem to have no direct connection to the history of the hotel. They are spirits of the land, figures from the wild history of Estes Park before the civilization and luxury of the Stanley appeared. Their presence once again reinforces the theory of the Vortex. The hotel not only contains its own spirits, but also acts as a focal point, attracting even spirits from the land's ancient history. They are the echoes of a time of violence and conflict, still resonating amidst the hotel's splendor. The haunting of the Stanley Hotel is not just limited to the luxurious upper floors. Beneath its foundation lies another world, a network of caves and tunnels that few people know about. In the early days of the hotel, F.O. Stanley believed it was unprofessional for guests to see the staff. Therefore, he had a system of underground tunnels built so that employees could move between different areas of the hotel, from the main building to the concert hall, the lodge, the restaurant, and the laundry room, without being seen. These tunnels, designed for secrecy and invisible movement, have now become one of the most haunted areas of the hotel. Many paranormal activities have been reported in these narrow, dark passageways. In particular, people often smell the inexplicable, alluring scent of freshly baked pastries, believed to be from the ghost of a pastry chef still lingering in his old workspace underground. To me, subterranean spaces in haunted locations always carry a particularly frightening significance. They represent the subconscious, the hidden parts of a building's history. The fact that these tunnels were created for people to move invisibly is an ironic coincidence, as they have now become the dwelling place of truly invisible spirits. From the diligent housekeeper in room 217, the nightmare that inspired a masterpiece, the supernatural portal at the grand staircase, the gentle hosts, the playground of ghost children to the grumpy cowboys and earls, and even the secrets underground. The Stanley Hotel is truly a complex and diverse world of spirits. It is a testament to the idea that a place can be haunted not just by a single tragedy, but by the very flow of history, by the intense emotions of people, and by the energy of the land upon which it sits. Each spirit, whether gentle or frightening, is a story, a piece of the puzzle that makes up the immortal legend of the Stanley Hotel. Thank you for joining me on this detailed exploration. What do you think about the spirits at the Stanley? Do you believe in the theory of the vortex? Please leave your opinions in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next journeys into the world of the unexplained.